All right, we are live. Hi, how are you, Dr. Hala?
Hello, hi,
Good.
Sandra. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
All good, all good. Thank you for making the time tonight. Thank you لكل الاتtendees اللي معنا. Tonight we have quite a big number of audience attendees. The subject in itself is an important topic. كتير عليه يعني usually we don't talk about it. It's a lot of internalized. It's an internalized fear that we don't usually say hi. I have fear of abandonment.
Of course.
بس بنعيشه كتير and it materializes, it shows in a lot of our relationships in our behaviors, in our patterns, our triggers. فحابين اليوم يعني you're the expert in this. حابين نعرف منك أكتر هيك how does it happen, where does it come from, can we get over it, is there a way out يعني شوي تقدري to help us navigate. واليوم we have a mix of in our audience of parents and single يعني منهم in a relationship أو in a relationship but not married without kids. So كمان maybe at some point كمان pass on we can talk about the message of how this fear of abandonment is great, that parents are more careful also in raising their kids إذا
Of
عندهم kids.
course, of course, of course.
رح
Thank
تعرفي
you.
عن حالك بالأول
أي
وأنا
أكيد.
بقول لك a big thank you for giving back to the community, to the growing community of سيرة. ويعني بالعكس نحن whatever يعني this support that we have from you is a very precious. We love the learning that comes from these sessions. You are always opening topics that are very important and things that we don't know how to deal with, that are not talked about, that are not mainstream. So the floor is yours. Start by
Thank you
introducing
so much.
yourself and نحن بس بدنا نقول للناس قبل ما تبلشي just to ask their questions anonymously. This is going to be interactive. Please يجينا أسئلة تساؤلاتهم كلهم يكتبون. They can write them through the app on the Q&A ويخلوا identity تبعهم private so that we can answer a lot of questions throughout this hour and a half. So,
Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me. It's with great pleasure, yani, always. And I love to do these kind of talks, and I really would like it to be interactive so people can ask questions, can share their thoughts. وانت شوي شوي يعني بتصيري بتخبريني, and then I will adapt. So it's not like a course or something didactical. You said earlier إنه في هيدا الشيء ما كتير بنحكي عنه, يعني ما بنجي بنقول I have fear of abandonment. And usually it's يمكن easier for people to say I have depression than to say I have fear of abandonment. It's something that's always lived with a bit of shame and embarrassment. So I'm Hala. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm currently based in France, but I do a lot of research in Lebanon. Basically, I specialize in everything that's related to trauma, traumatic experience, and how interpersonal relationships can also be a big part of healing trauma. So I will begin by just maybe we can define what is fear of abandonment. لأنه it's very normal to fear losing people that we love, right? It's not it's a human worry. It's a normal worry. يعني كلنا بنفكر من وقت للتاني, بنخاف ما يصير شيء, بنخاف ما. But the fear of abandonment is a much more complex feeling. The fear of abandonment really is like an overwhelming fear that people that you love, that you are close to, will leave you physically or emotionally. So it can be restricted to romantic partners, but it also can include friendships, other kind of relationships, even colleagues, even, and there are varying degrees. Some people have it, especially because the most frequent type is the fear of abandonment within romantic relationships. But there are also some people can have it in romantic relationships and can also have it in other form, like friendships or even family or in their work. A fear of abandonment, it can be really devastating because the paradox in it is that the people that suffer from it and they're going to do everything to try to avoid this abandonment, and ironically it often leads to the other person pulling away. So this is what's the drama in it, because fear of abandonment can lead us to do like some irrational things and things out of impulsive in really, and become very clingy and become in a way to deal with this fear that we have, that will ultimately lead the other person to pull away, and that will make the abandonment like self-fulfilling prophecy. Or it can also manifest in some people that they are gonna tend to leave the relationship at the first sign of that can be interpreted like an abandonment. People will leave the relationship, will reject before being rejected. So either they will do some impulsive behaviors that will tend the other person to pull away, either they will be the one who will pull away very quickly and move on very quickly and go from relationship to relationship, because we cannot dissociate fear of abandonment from fear of intimacy. So these two are very connected. And I think that what's also very problematic in the fear of abandonment and the people that really experience it, it is a big suffering. Yani, what the people feels in this state of panic when she or he feels that his partner, because it's the most frequent scenario, will leave him or رح يفل أو رح يتركه, the anguish that is experienced is something that's really one of the most hurtful feelings. Yani, when you listen to people describe how they feel or what happens to them, because sometimes people do not identify it, they just have physical symptoms. They feel like they cannot breathe anymore. They feel that their heart is beating so fast. They feel that they have all these kind of physical symptoms, and it's completely overwhelming. And they are paralyzed. They are paralyzed. Our rational brain is paralyzed by this fear of abandonment, and it can really lead to people behaving in certain ways. So either they will become very clingy, very needy, tracking down their partner all the time, demanding that proofs of love all the time. And they can also, it can also be mistaken for people who look like they are controlling and dominating, but this is to hide their fear of abandonment. So they would, for example, blame their partners. You're not taking care of me. You're not taking a good care of me. You're not doing enough. You're not showing your love, and always blaming and blaming and blaming, which ultimately will lead the partner eventually to pull off and to pull away, because no one likes to be blamed all the time, and no one likes to be I think that this happens especially usually we see in couple therapy, because sometimes I'm not a couple therapist, but it happens in my practice that I see couples and families, and usually we have this combination of the woman who is always in need of more love, more care, more affection, more that the man would show more, and the man who is form of avoidant. So every time he has more fear of what we call a fear of being controlled. So fear of being controlled with fear of being abandonment. usually هيدا الكومبو ماتش الكابل اكثر شيء بيتخانقوا, because and usually it happens that they are often together for a weird reason. They often attract each other, and we have this dynamic of the person who always fears of being controlled, and the person who fears of being left behind. And the more she will be demanding, the more she will pursue, the more he will pull away, and the circle will come again and again. So it can be really something that's devastating. And I think the most important step is to really recognize it. No person is like another. Every person has its own experience, her or his own way to show, to live a relationship, to show things. But usually there are some signs that show and know that this person has a fear of abandonment. One of the first signs is people who have a fear of abandonment tend to attach quickly. So when we say attach quickly, is they tend to invest a relationship very quickly. Even before the other person has shown any sign of commitment or love or honesty or loyalty, they will invest the relationship very quickly, and they will tend to idealize the person at the beginning of the relationship. And usually what happens is that they tend to invest everything in the relationship when it begins. They get to, for example, they stop seeing their friends, they stop doing the usual activities that they do. They're all into this relationship thinking about the relationship, thinking about the other person. I mean, it's not good or bad. It can happen if people are in love. Yani, we're not here saying, this is pathological, but we're describing a certain functioning. And some people tend to attach very quickly. And usually when they attach very quickly, usually it's because they have this very strong need. And it's very important to differentiate between attaching quickly, having this need to attach quickly, and having the need to connect. These are two different things. لأنه some person can attach quickly even if they don't read the sign. They cannot read the clues that the other person is not, for example, very much emotionally available, or they will only pick up on clues that will comfort their schema and know this is the right one, he's good, he's perfect, the relationship. Another sign also is, and I wrote some notes, is
أنا سؤال على
yes,
الأتاتش.
of course.
How do you know مثل ما قلتي يعني إذا اليوم لأنه this is a complex topic مثل ما قلتي and sometimes we mistake fear of abandonment مع other emotions, مع يمكن sadness because a relationship is ending.
Of course.
We're not aware that our fear of abandonment led anyway for this relationship to end. So يمكن شوي إنه we need some guidance منك أكتر على this self-awareness process. And how do we know that we attached quickly when there is مثل ما قلتي يعني sometimes the combo is there's a person that is tending to attach quickly مع حدا who pulls away, and usually this is attractive. يعني this is في إنه the chase, I want to prove myself, so it keeps you hanging in this loop. So how do we know there's attachment? صار في attachment quickly. It's this dynamic that's unhealthy, no? Is it? Dynamic.
Well, it's really, it's not just one sign, it's a constellation of signs. And attaching quickly in itself, it happens if if two persons fall in love, they attach quickly. Some people tend to engage and commit very fast, and in and of itself, it's not something that's wrong. It's one of the signs from the constellation of signs that a person might have this fear of abandonment, is they invest too much in the relationship, too much in the person. فيك تقولي لي بس يمكن the other person is also feeding this up. Yes, of course, it could be that the other person is feeding this up. A relationship is also based on two, but it's about being a bit aware about the different. Since I met this guy, for example, I stopped seeing my friends. This is usually a pattern of all or nothing. I'm all in this. I'm all in this relationship. I'm not at all in this relationship. So this pattern of all or nothing, black and white, this has a risk. The people who function like this have a risk of having fear of abandonment. هلا بنحكي عن causes بعدين from where it comes وهيك، بس خلينا نحكي أول شيء what are we talking about. Okay, let's define it. So another thing that's very very typical and frequent is that people who have a fear of abandonment often they find themselves in relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. So usually they will tend to attach or choose people who are emotionally unavailable, and the explanation for this is very complex, and we have no exact scientific explanation, but one of the explanation is that it's a challenge for them. They have to prove to themselves that even an emotionally available partner will love them and will not leave them. Like it's a form of challenge, it's a form of victory that they think they will have over this fear of abandonment. But paradoxically, أكيد they will suffer more because emotionally unavailable partner will not be able to reassure and secure them the way that they need. So this is one thing. Another thing is that sometimes people who have a fear of abandonment tend to leave the relationships quickly. As soon as they feel threatened, they would leave the relationship because they are afraid of being rejected. So they reject before being rejected, even if their fears are not based on something really rational. For example, they would tend to interpret إذا مثلا ما بعرف مثلا صاحبها ما رد عليها أو ما رد على المسار أو تأخر لي إلا بونوي أو تأخر لي إلا بونجور. الانتربريتاسيون رح تكون دايما إنه ما بقى بيحبني، رح يتركني، ما بقى بده إياني، ما بيحترمني، ما بيحطني priority. So the interpretation is always either the other person is a savior, either the other person is like an abuser. So هيدا الانterpretation بتخلي إنه the people who have a fear of abandonment can get very suspicious, and usually these are the person who are most jealous and possessive and try to be controlling, but ultimately it's because they suffer, right? It's not because they are mean people, يعني, but no, it's because really they are suffer, so they tend to be very suspicious. The first interpretation that would come to their mind if partner does not answer this message is not, no, maybe he's busy, or is not, maybe he didn't hear it, he'll call me back, and go on with their lives until their partner calls them back and talk to him. It's more like he doesn't want me, he's ignoring me, why didn't he leave? And they would stay stuck in this negative emotion until the other person calls. So, you know, it can be very heavy burden, لأنه their life can get suspended, and their mood becomes dependent on how the other person is with them. This being said, it doesn't mean إنه in a healthy relationship we should accept everything and tolerate that the person all the time pulls away. It doesn't mean that at all. But it means that sometimes a person who does not have this overwhelming fear of abandonment can detect the signs that the other person is pulling away and can talk about it, but will not be completely devastated, and feels that he's nothing, and will not behave in a way, in a very compulsive or impulsive way to prevent this abandonment from happening. يعني الفرق بين normal worry of losing people we love and fear of abandonment is that people who have fear of abandonment act it out. Usually they act it out. They refrain to act it out a lot because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to seem clingy. For example, at the beginning of the relationship, they are very careful not to send too much message. They overthink. They overthink. ببعت ما ببعت ده ما ده. So they tend to overthink the relationship. They tend to. And usually what happens is that they, when this pulling away happens, the person either will leave the relationship, so this is an acting out without explanation, either will resort to things like a lot of texts, a lot of messages, blames, you are not answering, either will threaten, I will kill myself if you leave, I will kill myself if something happen, I will harm myself. هيدول extreme forms of fear of abandonment. So to answer the question that was previously asked, how do we differentiate between fear of abandonment and a normal attachment that is in a love, is the behaviors that accompany it, and is the acting out, is the أكيد it can happen from time to time. We all have maladaptive behaviors from time to time. It's the repetitive pattern of the maladaptive behavior that make it maladaptive. إذا أنا كل مرة بيتأخر جوزي ليرد علي بعمل كريزة وبنهار وبعمل بانيك اتاكس وما بقدر كفي نهاري وما بقعد افكر بشي بالشغل لا يعرف حديث ما يدق, then this is a maladaptive behavior pattern. إذا صارت مرة لأنه أنا أتعب period where I'm fragile, it's okay. إذا صارت كذا مرة, it's okay. But if it is my repetitive pattern, then it can be a problem, and it can also devastate my relationship.
أنا كذا سؤال. Can it be fear of abandonment شوي؟ يعني في شوي وفي كتير
أكيد it's degrees. It's أكيد it could be really degrees, and it's not classified as a diagnosis, right? It's not a psychiatric diagnosis. We're not classifying it as a psychiatric diagnosis, but people who have an intense fear of abandonment, usually it's within what we call a personality disorder. But a lot of people, it's extremely common to have fear of abandonment in different degrees, and to act sometimes when we are insecure in a relationship, we act sometimes in a very maladaptive behavior because the other person also is triggering it. يعني كمان we cannot put all the responsibility بس علينا. ما أوقات we are sometimes with toxic people who like to play with us, who manipulate us. So of course that this also can trigger, if we have a bit of predisposition, we can be completely insecure with a partner and completely secure with another partner. So it also depends on the partner. يعني it's not only the responsibility of the person, and And no one is expecting from a person to be all the time completely rational, completely calm, completely we all have our ups and downs. But again, it's a repetitive pattern of it, and how much it overwhelms my mind, how much it occupies my mental space. Imagine, for example, if in a relationship one of the people in the relationship has for example a business trip, or has to go away, and if the other person is completely thinking what he's doing, what she's doing, حكتني ما حكتني ما دقت لي لا دقت لي شو عم تعمل هلا بتضل. So this is something, being able to move on with your life, knowing that this partner will come back and you will reunite is something. And هون بوصل على شغلة كتير مهمة، إنه people who have a secure attachment style usually are protected against overwhelming fear of abandonment. وحنفوت هلا بالattachment styles، بس أول شيء خليني كفي just on some issues on how to identify fear of abandonment. Yes, there's question.
أنا سؤالين إذا بدك.
أكيد.
Okay, I have a fear of abandonment, and when I feel that my partner is not being available, I walk away.
Yes, this is what I was saying. And usually, sometimes when you walk away from an emotionally unavailable partner, good for you. Yani, you shouldn't stay with an emotionally unavailable partner if you want a long-term relationship. If you're searching for a committed relationship, maybe it's because it does not suit you. But walking away from a committed relationship just because you are interpreting this person might be pulling away without talking about it, or without trying to just see if this is really the truth, this becomes problematic. But if the partner is emotionally unavailable, is not fulfilling your needs, then walking away is not an unhealthy response. It's an unhealthy response when it's done out of fear.
Okay, very clear. Commenting, I'm always attracted to unavailable partners. Do I have fear of abandonment?
Well, it's one of the symptoms, as we say, it's a constellation of signs: attaching quickly, attaching to emotionally unavailable partners because we feel that it's a challenge, and because we feel that we have, it's like a form, I'm winning over myself, I'm winning over my fear, I'm winning over my insecurity, so I go and risk it with a very emotional unavailable partner, and I repeat and repeat and repeat. Other things are usually people who have fear of abandonment usually are people who really aim to please. They are more of pleasers. They like to please people. Sometimes they engage, for example, in unwanted sex, even if they don't really feel a desire. They would do it just for their partner not to be frustrated, or because they feel that if they don't satisfy their partner's sexual needs, even if they don't feel the need or they don't have the desire to have a sexual relationship, they would more frequently accept to do this. People who usually either, as you say, walk away because of interpretations that they have, or stay in relationships no matter how unhealthy they are. And usually people who have fear of abandonment also feel insecure and unworthy of love. So it's also related to an issue of self-esteem and fear of intimacy. So what is fear of intimacy? بس تنفرق between fear of intimacy and fear of abandonment. Fear of intimacy is the fear of really disclosing what you really feel, your inner thoughts, your inner world, your inner emotional world. So people with fear of intimacy will be always will have this a bit of control on how much they reveal when they are in a relationship, either emotionally, it can be intellectually, it can be sexually. So they tend to be more inhibited sexually because they have this fear of letting go, this fear of really connecting sexually. So, and usually they are linked. They can be linked. Fear of abandonment and fear of intimacy can be linked. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Also, there is another thing: people who have fear of abandonment, they tend to self-blame a lot. So, for example, they would first of all, they would self-blame that they are clingy to their partners, even though they cannot control it. They will tend to self-blame as something happened in the relationship, it's their fault. So they go and pursue the partner because they only pick up on hints no, it's their fault. Whereas بيكون أوقات في hints كتير واضحين إنه it's the other person who doesn't want to be in the relationship. They contain a lot of repressed anger and control issues, and they contain it, and فجأة it blows in their face. They can be hypersensitive to criticism, and they tend to overthink things. They tend to overthink, the relationship, to rationalize it, to ruminate about it again and again. And usually, generally, they can have feelings of general anxiety and depression. And as I said before, they are often jealous and controlling and possessive. And this is related because they find it hard to trust people. So even if they are in a relationship and they love the person, they will find it very hard to trust this person. So this is a bit, some of the signs that should make us think, and no, there's the fear of abandonment, and we should address it.
بس مثل ما قلتي دكتور هلا it's also at degrees. يعني في اشياء
Of
منهم
course.
انه
Of
كلنا
course.
somehow we have to a certain degree some attachment issues, maladaptive
Of course. Of
behavior.
course.
When it's taken to an extreme that really
And when it is repetitive, when it is repetitive, and when it leads to recurrent and repetitive acting out. So وقت أقول acting out يعني it's the behavior that defines. أنت فيك يكون عندك fear of abandonment، أو يمكن حاسة إنه your partner is pulling away, and this is causing you a certain discomfort, but you're gonna still be able to do what you have to do, talk with your friends, يعني try to deal with this emotion in a way that's not self-destructive, that and you will not go stalk your partner, you will not go send him text that he's nothing, that he's a monster, and do things and threaten. So this is a bit the difference. And no, it's not about the emotion, it's about how you deal with the emotion.
I love this. يعني هيك it's clear to us now إنه هي أكتر how do we behave. يعني what do we do?
Exactly. How do you act out this emotion in a very maladaptive behavior repetitively? This is where you have fear of abandonment. Why? Because this fear of abandonment becomes uncontrolling. And we all have fear of abandonment, but we can control it, we can regulate it, we can, it's okay. رح أنطر ليرجع لأحكي، مش ضروري أبعت له 5000 تكست وهيدا، إنه أوكي فيه يكون يمكن مع وحدة غيري، بس يمكن يكون عن جد بالشغل، سو خليني أنطر ليجي لنحكي. بالنتيجة this is the man I love, he loves me. إنه we can find ways to reassure ourselves. But again, I'm saying, if the other partner, I'm talking about partner because usually it really touches more romantic relationship. Exactly. But if really the other person is like toxic, manipulative, playing with my mind, so it's gonna trigger maladaptive behaviors in person who already have this predisposition of fear of abandonment. So the same person can be very different in two different couples. So she can be completely, or he can be completely out of his mind in one relationship, and then in another relationship be able to regulate himself more because he has been able to build a trusting and a secure relationship. So this is also important.
It's very important to know. It's not only us, it's also in relation to dynamic مع حدا تاني. And what's triggering this
of course.
Can abandonment issues make us very independent and avoidant?
Falsely independent. يعني هو السؤال كان attachment issue, can abandonment issue make us independent or dependent?
Independent.
Okay. Well, it can make us avoidant. Some people, as I said, there are different forms of how the fear of abandonment manifests. In some people, it manifests through clinginess, neediness, threatening, stalking your partner, sending a million messages, always fearing the worst, doing everything to prevent the separation. In other forms, it can be through avoidance. So I avoid intimacy, I avoid long-term relationship, I avoid committing because I don't want to be hurt. So as soon as things become serious, I walk away. This is يعني emotionally unavailable people are people deep down who fear relationships, but it doesn't mean that we should heal them within the relationship, because I mean يعني we shouldn't think إنه some people tend to rationalize and say, oh, if he's emotionally unavailable, it's because he fears intimacy. So as أنا بخليه to not to fear intimacy, بصير عاملتها إنه her mission إنه لا أنا رح خليه لأنه emotional unavailability at the core it's something. No, بس أنت you're not his therapist, so إنه خلاص emotionally unavailable and you want something serious, just walk away. You know, so it's, I mean, it's not that simple أكيد, but just to explain that yes, avoidance in relationship and emotional avoidance and intimacy avoidance are related also to fear of abandonment and fear of being hurt. And this is where I come to, I think it's important to talk about attachment style, and I really invite all the participants to look it out. You can find a lot of readings about it. It's Bowlby's theory of attachment. It's really very relevant to children and to adults. I don't know if you already had a talk about it before.
We had a talk about it. Yes, we kind of invite the attendees to watch. There's a whole talk about.
Yes, this is a very, very important, because it explains a lot. It's very related to the fear of abandonment, and it explains a lot of our styles, relationship styles. So basically, yani, to do it, to sum it up, since you already had it, but basically we develop, each person develops a sense of self and a sense of security. Yani, a sense of self, that what is a sense of self? That yani, I have a stable self. My stable self will not fall apart if my mother walks away for 5 minutes. I will still be myself and have a stable sense of self, even if my mom or my dad is not here and I'm not seeing them. So this is a sense of self, a sense of secure attachment. So what is secure attachment, and how does it form? Usually it is formed in the early years of childhood. So the child, when we attend to the needs of the child in a constant way and in a regular manner, the child learns how to regulate him or herself. So usually we are not born with the ability to regulate ourselves. Self-regulation is something that is taught through the environment. So if a child, when he screams, when he cries, we answer to his cries, we answer to his scream, we comfort him, we give him what we need, we feed him when he's hungry, we give him to drink when he's thirsty, we attend to his needs. He becomes to integrate a positive sense of the word. When I scream, someone comes. When I am hurt, someone helps me. So he integrates a positive sense of the word and a positive sense of himself, and progressively he learns how to self-regulate by mobilizing the image of this person who always attends to him. So, for example, يعني progressively بصير مثلا وقتها يبكي بيعرف انه في حدا رح يجي، so بصير بيبكي اقل. so فيي انطر لانه في حدا رح يجي بعدين. And the secure attachment, it comes from this. It comes from when I know, and even if the person that cares about me is not here, I am not going to fall apart, and this person will come back. And suppose it does not come back in adult relationship, I will not fall apart. I will not die. You know, this is what's important in the secure attachment.
عم نحكي أي أعمار هلا يعني this is formed when we're zero or
هلا usually إذا بدنا نحكي prevention، أحسن شيء فينا نعمله إنه to begin to work on it since as soon as the baby is born. بس أكيد nothing is irreversible. يعني there are children who, for example, were in very abusive environments in their early years, up to 5-6 years, and then they were in very loving environments. Of course, it was very difficult at first, but it's something that we can learn at any age. With teenagers, for example, who had difficult childhoods, or who have a lot of difficulty regulating themselves, emotional dysregulation, self-harm, they can learn again to regulate themselves, and they can learn to trust, to have trusting relationships. But أكيد it's more difficult. يعني إذا بدنا نحكي prevention, it's best to have it يعني بتبلش من اليوم يلي الولد بيخلق فيه. مشان هيك وقت يقولوا لك إنه لا خليه يبكي ليتعلم، لا ما تخليه
يتعلم. إنه نحن
لا
نتربى على الكرايت اوت ميثود. So is
انه
this
تركيه يبكي بالتخت لانه
yeah.
اذا بكي بيتعلم وهيك وما تغنجيه هو بيكون عمره جمعه. لا اكيد لا، انه you are inducing a lot of stress in his mind, you are inducing a lot of stress hormones. so اكيد we should attend to a baby who cries. هلا بعدين وقت يصير عمره 3 4 ويبلش يعمل tantrums وهيك this is a different story. بس انه attending to a need of a baby, this is the basis of a secure attachment. And people who are securely attached, it doesn't mean that they don't have feelings. It doesn't mean that they don't worry about people leaving us. It doesn't mean that they are like hey, super zen all the time. But it's just that they can regulate themselves when they are feeling distressed. This is people who don't have a secure attachment are usually people who have lived in their childhood either severe forms of sexual, physical, emotional abuse, but sometimes they are in very normal environments, but the parents were really emotionally unavailable. So either they would maybe suffer themselves from depression, had a mental disorder, were very busy, did not really attend to their child's need, not because of lack of love, but just because of like their life circumstances, and the child can really live it as if he's not important, what he feels is not important. And usually when it happens, it's a kind of emotional neglect. In this kind of emotional neglect, what happens is that the child does not learn to identify his emotions. No one validates his emotion. When a child, for example, cries and we tell him خلص حتبكي, شو بنكون عم نعطي مسج انه خلص حتبكي، سو انا ما لي حق ابكي، وانه ما لازم ابكي، ومش منيح اذا ابكي واذا عم ببكي، وما حتى فهم ليش هو عم يبكي، يعني ما لحق يعمل بروسس للشيء ابدا. بينما اذا ولد عم يبكي بيجوا اهله وبيقولوا له عم تبكي لانه انت هلا زعلان، لانه ما بعرف انكسرت اللعبه تبعك. At least they are naming the emotion, they are helping the child identify his emotion, because this is the first step to help how to regulate. And it's the same thing with the fear of abandonment. It's important to detect it. It's important to be able to identify that I have this fear. Okay, I'm having this panic attack because I have this fear that my partner leaves me, but I don't have any evidence of this yet. It's all interpretation in my head. Yani we can learn to soothe ourselves. We can learn to help to regulate ourselves. And what really helps in this is having a community around us, having like social network, having other important, significant relationships in our life than only one. يعني حتى لو it's not a romantic relationship, even if it's one friendship, it shouldn't be one friendship. It's really we need a tribe. we need a tribe. We need a community. We need social network. لأنه this is really what helps, and what's recommended for people who have fear of abandonment is to be able to invest other relationships and to also be connect with other people. So this is really important. We tend to, this is, I think it's a bit of a modern tendency. We tend to maybe think that our partner will fulfill all our needs, but no one person can fulfill all our needs. And this has been discussed a lot in many talk shows and many in the media. And I think this is true.
بالromantic relationship يعني هلا you're talking in general. So if there's this dynamic in the romantic relationship, what do you advise the person who has this fear of abandonment, is it enough to have other meaningful relationships حتى لو ما كانوا romantic؟ ولا يعني لأنه بنشوف كمان tendency of مثل ما قلت يعني يا having multiple partners يا leaving one relationship for another يا infidelity. So what do you recommend?
Well, I think that first of all, it's important to have self-awareness, and it's important to understand that, okay, I'm having fear of abandonment. And again, it varies depending on the context. If we are in the context of a trusting, loving relationship with a partner that's doing everything he or she can, but is not being able to reassure us, is something. A different course of action. Another course of action here is that we are with a person that's emotionally unavailable, that is not treating us well, that's really manipulative. So this is also a different course of action. It's not the same. So if we are إذا all the evidence عم بتفرجينا إنه هيدا الشخص هو شخص بده يبقى معي وبحبني و is doing his best بس إنه أنا whatever he does it's not enough. So حيلا شخص رح يوصل لوقت ما حيقدر يتحمل إنه يكون to reassure all the time. يعني no one wants to be in a couple with a child. You know what I mean? يعني, you know, sometimes when we have this fear of abandonment that's intense, it's like the little child, our inner little child wakes up and becomes to cry, you know, please take care of me, help me, love me. But it's not our adult self, it's our inner child self. And some people can be very caring and can tolerate this, but at the end of the day, no person is gonna be يعني, is going to be able to heal this inner child. And this needs therapy, it needs the person, it needs work. And we cannot only rely on our partner to heal this inner child, but what we need to understand is when we have these extreme overwhelming emotions and fear of abandonment that trigger panic attack and that trigger this temptation to act out these emotions with the partner, we have to understand that this is a reactivation of our earlier trauma, and it is not related only with the present situation. It's related to a reactivation of older traumas, when we were neglected, when we were not listened to, when we used to cry and maybe our parents ignored us, when we had this or this type of trauma. So it's really related, related to traumatic experiences. And I think this is the first step, is to be aware that it's not every time necessarily related to the present situation. It is something in the present situation that triggered an older trauma and reactivating this hypervigilance and negative emotions. And usually, for example, a child who lives in an abusive environment, who has been abused by his parents, even if not fully abused, like, you know, some kind of insidious emotional abuse or emotional distance, or feeling that he's not important, usually what happens is that he's gonna either like suppress his feelings, so he will not have any of those feelings. Either he will learn to become very defensive, so behavioral problems, oppositional problems. And this is why people tend to also, who have fear of abandonment, tend to be suspicious and not trust people, because they don't have this stable sense of the world and of themselves. So I would say the first thing is to be aware that I'm having a fear of abandonment. This fear of abandonment is not, it can be related to the present situation as my partner is toxic, but إنه عم نحكي نحن عن a normal relationship where the other partner is really wants to let the relationship work. So I'm having this fear of abandonment. It's a reactivation of my older traumas, and really try to explore from where it comes from. And this is where therapy is important, like how to heal from this fear of being abandoned, is because it happened to me before. And I am fearing of being abandoned. I have this fear of being abandoned because it happened to me before. I was abandoned before in some way. So this is the first step. The second step is that self-compassion. So it's not like, you know, it's not like a test where the persons who are able to self-regulate are the best and the person who don't self-regulate are the worst, controlling. No, it's just your experience, your life, what you're living. It's okay, and no, not to self-blame. You know, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done this. And people who have fear of abandonment and act them out, for example, suppose they had this overwhelming fear of abandonment and they stalked their partner and they sent him bad messages and they insulted him, and then after they are mortified with guilt and they spend days crying and apologizing, so they become like they are ready to like humiliate themselves just for the other partner to forgive them. So they totally oscillate between victim, abuser, savior, victim, abuser, savior, victim, abuser, savior, and ultimately this is not healthy. So self-compassion is very important. I have a problem and I will seek the help that I need. Building a social network around you, it's very important. It's not enough. A kid is not gonna heal the fear of abandonment, because sometimes when we are too stuck in the fear of abandonment, without noticing, we become self-centered. And we don't really realize that we are self-centered, a kid, and it's not a bad thing. but we become self-centered, centered on our suffering, centered. And even with our friends, we're going to just stay fixated on this and talk about this over and over and over again, and not really realize that our friends maybe want to talk about something else. Or so building a social support network is really being able to be yourself with other people, to care about other people. So sometimes it helps when you care about other people to just not stay centered and fixated on your own problems. So this is the third step, building a community, building social network, because no one person can fulfill your needs ever. And the last thing is to do a personal therapy or a couple therapy, because couple therapy also that are based on attachment-based couple therapy also help, because they work on this dynamic, because usually it's two that are triggering the dynamic. So it also helps to do a couple therapy in this.
عندنا كتير أسئلة.
يلا I'm ready.
قبل ما
رح أشوف
نوصل
أنا النوتس إذا في شيء نسيت أقوله، بس أكيد go ahead.
Okay, how can I reassure my partner who has the fear of abandonment?
Okay, this is a very important question, Anjad. I'm so glad that this question was asked. Okay, I think that for someone who has fear of abandonment, first of all, it's important that in a relationship, you give him or her the necessary reassurance. Maybe he needs more reassurance than a person who doesn't have this overwhelming fear. It's necessary to be constant. Constancy is very important. Constancy is very important. To be really constant with this person and reassure him that sometimes if I don't answer you, but without apologizing, without also doing too much. Because if you reassure him too much all the time, you will perpetuate this need of being reassured all the time, and it's not sustainable on the long run. So you need to reassure him in a constant and adult manner, but without doing too much. If you do too much, it's like it becomes he's entitled to being reassured in this manner all the time. And
كأنه عم نطلب منه كل مرة هو يعمل هالرياكشن، نحن we will apologize and
وخاصة إذا الشخص اللي معنا عم يطلب منا to reassure him all the time، ونحن we're overly reassure him over time and time again, and it's not enough, so it's not helping. I think it's important to talk and to tell and to explain, so to identify the specific situation that make your partner feel that you might abandon him. So you can reassure him, I'm not in that state of mind at all. I am with you, I love you, we have a committed relationship. What are the situations that make you think that I might want to leave? So it's important to see what are the triggers. And sometimes it's completely irrational triggers. For example, the partner might say, well, when you don't call me all day, I feel that it's because you don't want me, or so it's important to reassure him, and if I don't call you all day because I'm busy at work, because I understand it's important for you, so okay, I can do it, but not call all day. I can call once during the day. We shouldn't overdo it, it will not help the other person. We should reassure, we should be constant, we should identify what are the specific situations that trigger this fear of abandonment. Maybe it's because we spend all day at work and we're not calling. Maybe it's because, for example, when we talk to him and he's not answering because he's on his phone. Maybe it can be things like that. And sometimes that are things that are rational. For example, some people may fear okay, I feel that you ما بعرف some situations can be a bit borderline, but it doesn't mean that we cannot talk about it, and the other person must do what it has to reassure us, but in a reasonable manner. And I'm thinking I knew a couple who, the woman was extremely insecure because she had a lot of history of heavy traumas, abuse, and everything. And with her husband, who really loved her, he really loved her dearly, and he really tried to do everything he could to reassure her all the time. So for example, if he would travel, she would ask that he keeps the camera on in the hotel all night. Imagine. And he would do it to reassure her, but ultimately it didn't help, because she kept going. She kept feeling that she can demand more and more and more and more, and this was not healthy of him. He was doing his best to try to reassure her, but at the end of the day, he felt that, I mean, everything he's doing is not enough because she's still suspicious of him. Okay, this is an extreme case, but no, it's important until we sat, the three of us, and we really talked with her. No, this is fueling your insecurity, and this is an unreasonable demand. A reasonable demand would be that, when you travel, I would like you to call me during the day because it's important for me. This is a reasonable demand. But not keep the camera on all time, wherever you are, even if you're in the middle of the meeting, you stop the meeting, you go out from the room, you call me. These are unreasonable demands. This is really where you set your boundaries. So for a partner of someone who has fear of abandonment, I think it's important to understand that it's not against you. You should try to reassure and be constant, but at the same time set your boundaries. Yani where are the boundaries that you really feel are going too much?
Does working on self-worth help?
Of course, it helps a lot, because when you have
the core of it, self-worth,
I think what in the core is more a secure attachment. It's more if we have a secure attachment that is related to self-worth, because when you have a self-worth, it doesn't come from within. Self-worth, it begins to form in your early years when you see in the eyes of your parents that you are an important person. If a child is 1 year old and his parents are telling him انه انت مش منيح وانت هيدا وليش عملت هيك وانت, if he's hearing all these negative things about him, so اكيد he will not have any kind of self-worth. يعني عم برجع على early experiences, لأنه early experiences كتير مهمين, and this is where it begins. It's not, I think that people can change and evolve, and you can have healing relationships in your life that can help you. It's not, we shouldn't say انه خلص حدا abused as a child رحت عليه, لا. But just it's gonna be a person that's gonna suffer more and have has more of a risk of fear of abandonment and extreme instability in interpersonal relationship.
So هون self-worth كيف ينشغل عليه دكتور هلا؟
Listen, self-worth, it's not an intellectual exercise. It's not something إنه إذا أنا قريت كتاب of self-help إنه you should love yourself, you should trust yourself. هذا كله ما بينفع. Self-worth, usually it comes through healthy, nurturing relationship. And if this is not available in our environment, through therapy. لأنه therapy, it also helps in self-worth by creating this kind of reparative relationship with the therapist that will help you heal from previous relationship. So self-worth, it's not an intellectual exercise. I want to have self-worth, خليني أتعلم كيف. It's experiences, it's positive experiences of relationships. It can sometimes some friendships can help you with your self-worth, because you feel that you are worthy for your friends, because you feel that your friends care about you, because you care about them, because you feel efficient. Self-worth is very related also to self-efficiency. When we feel efficient in our lives, either in our work or in our activities that we do, or in our relationship, this feeling of self-efficiency in relationship of worthiness, it helps build self-worth. So it's really about experiences, positive experiences, and I would say positive experiences of interpersonal relationship. We are social human beings. We cannot be we cannot be masters of self-worth without having caring and nurturing relationships with our close ones.
Can infidelity trigger fear of abandonment?
Of course, this is of course
secure attachment.
Yeah.
قصد السؤال عنده secure attachment شوي فجأة صار infidelity بلش عنده fear of abandonment.
Of course, infidelity is a very hard situation to live for the person who has been like, even for the person who has had an affair, but for the person who has been cheated on, it's something that can be devastating. So if this person has already a fear of abandonment, paradoxically, رح أقول شيء very paradoxical here, but what we see actually in clinical practice, إنه sometimes the persons who have this fear of abandonment, as they fear all the time that their partner is cheating on them, they tell us, I wish that he would cheat on me, so خلاص برتاح وبتأكد إنه أنا معي حق وبفل. And sometimes it's liberating for them. يعني إنه I was right all along, and unfortunately it perpetuates their schema لأنه ثاقبوا مع حدا إنه. So usually it's more devastating for people who didn't expect it. لأنه persons who had fear of abandonment, that they were expecting it all the time
Or
وصارت,
waiting.
it's
Yeah.
devastating. It's أكيد it's hard for them, but it's self-perpetuate their unfortunately their pattern. But when you don't expect it at all, and it hits you, it's very hard, and it can make you vulnerable. And this is what I say. And I will repeat something that I said last time. Even resilience is something dynamic. So even attachment is something that can be dynamic. Even a person with secure attachment, at certain periods in their life, when they have very difficult circumstances, they can do a regression and get a bit insecure. And this is where it's important to mobilize all the support and the resources around you and your friends and your family to help go over this period and eventually think about the reasons of infidelity. What happened? Do you want to save the couple or not? Yani some couples survive infidelity. Some couple can survive infidelity and some not. So it's really dependent on the situation, on the context of the couple, on the.
Okay. Can you explain more the victim, abuser, savior?
Okay, so the victim, abuser, savior is a triangle. It has it's actually pretty famous in psychology. That describes actually three different patterns of functioning that sometimes are interchangeable. So usually people who have been abused, and it's very typical of people who have lived trauma or adverse childhood experiences. People who have been abused when they were children, usually they were victim of abuse, right? Okay, so they were a victim of abuse and they had an abuser. They could be their parent, another person in their environment. So one of the mechanism that the child can resort to in order to be able to bear this, because it's unbearable for a child to be abused by a person who is supposed to care for you, is to find excuses for this person. So he would say, okay, my mom is sick, my mom is very busy, my mom hits me because I'm bad, she's good, I'm the bad. So his mom becomes the victim and he becomes عشوائي the abuser. Or for example, he could put himself in a savior position and أنا رح ساعدها, أنا رح هيدا. So it's all form of rationalization that we're gonna put ourselves in, but ultimately it doesn't really it's not sustainable. لأنه هو كمان the child is hurt, he is wounded, so he can be in this position, but then he can, at times he will be very aggressive, he will be very he will feel that he's that he has all his anger, that he doesn't know what to do from it, and he can become himself an abuser. So it's more of metaphorical images to see that we can oscillate between being very suspicious, and this is really typical of children of trauma, children who have lived trauma. They oscillate between being very suspicious and aggressive, so a bit of the abuser, to being very vulnerable and fragile and the inner child that is a victim, to being a savior. I'm going to save him, he's emotionally unavailable, I'm going to make him emotionally unavailable, I'm going to make him understand his traumas. And this oscillation between victim, abuser, and savior, it can be very problematic, and is very typical of people who have lived traumas, unfortunately.
What do you recommend, Yani, to get out of this triangle?
I think, first of all, really identifying that it is the trauma, making the link between our patterns, relationship patterns, and current patterns, and between the trauma that we have experienced as children. So identifying that it is a reaction of trauma, that it is a trauma reaction, this is the first step, because it will help us take perspective from the present moment, instead of staying in the present moment and realizing that this is also related to previous abandonment issue and previous traumas that I have lived, that are deactivated, and try to nurture our adult self. لأنه this is all the child, this is our inner child that is hurt and that needs reassurance, and this child that no one was able to reassure when he needed this. So how we can reassure this inner child? Usually usually, I mean, therapy can help. Nurturing relationships, even if it's not in a romantic, at a romantic relationship, nurturing relationships, having support, having social support, and therapy.
يعني سؤالنا لك دكتور هلا if somebody has this anxious attachment, fear of abandonment, what calling it, can they possibly be in a nurturing relationship and
Yes,
actually heal؟ يعني
of course.
يعني شو اللي بيضمن انه ما رح هالشخص يعمل ذات البيهيفيرز يلي كانوا قبل يعني let's say they're not doing therapy and انت عم تقولي اليوم انه there's a big part that nurturing relationship play in
Of
our
course.
lives.
Of course.
And is it just being aware and being in a nurturing relationship enough?
Sometimes it is. When it is not, when it is not an extreme, severe form of fear of abandonment that's related, for example, to borderline personality disorder or to personality disorder, sometimes it is enough. We have seen plenty of examples of people, even without doing therapy, they had passed through a difficult period, they had experienced some traumatic experiences, they live with a person that tried to really, that stayed there, that stick to the relationship, that tried to reassure them without overdoing it. They have nurturing relationships around them, they have people who support them, friends, people who make them feel valued, they feel self-efficient also. I mean, also work is a big part of feeling self-efficient and being a bit secure, having a sense of self-worth through my work, through the activities that I do. So all these investments are important and create a sense of self and security. And yes, people can be in, can learn how to deal with this fear of abandonment, because it's not going to just go away. لأنه قلنا المشكلة هي how we act it out. It's not the emotion in itself. The emotion in itself, some people will always have it, but it's about how you control it, how you master it, how you regulate it, how you try to soothe yourself. So yes, it's completely possible. هلا أكيد extreme forms or severe forms of fear of abandonment, where it can really trigger an anxiety disorder, depression, suicidal ideas, self-harm, when it is in the context of a borderline personality disorder. So this is usually it needs more than just nurturing relationships.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
طب بتشوفي عادة كمان this fear of abandonment spills out of romantic relations, or it can be only centered in romantic relationship, but we have other يعني high functioning individuals, they have careers, they have kids, everything's okay, but in romantic relationship this is triggered, or usually is a severe or is a important, it spills in other areas.
Listen, no, it can be severe and important only in only in romantic relationships. Yes, because romantic relationships, they tend to reactivate earlier relationships that we have. They tend to reactivate patterns that we had in our earlier relationships. However, it's also frequent that in severe forms, it doesn't affect only romantic relationships, it can also affect friendships. For example, very close friendships, when we want to really be exclusive to this friend, when we get jealous if our friend is friend with other friends, or when we really fear that our friend doesn't want to talk to us anymore, or so it can also spill to other relationships. Sometimes in children, I mean, we talk about separation anxiety disorder. So children that are anxious, sometimes it's developmental. They pass through phases where it's normal to fear that something would happen to your parents, but sometimes they can really get stuck in a form of overwhelming fear that something will happen to their parents. They don't want to leave the house, they don't want to sleep at their friends. So this is also a kind of fear of abandonment. But in children, it's easier to work on the environment in children, because when you work on the parents, you can see tremendous improvements.
طب what about does our parenting is our parenting affected إذا نحن عنا fear of abandonment؟ بتشوفيها شيء إنه this affects our parenting؟ بتشوفيها إنه في ما بيحب الأهل بيصيروا معلقين أكتر بالولاد؟ I don't know, something you see.
Listen, yes, it could affect. I will tell you how. If someone has a fear of abandonment in the romantic relationship and has children, and something happens and he's overwhelmed by his fear of abandonment and becoming to have panic attacks or ideas or suspicious idea, he will automatically be less emotionally available for his kids. So it affects parenting in a way that, since it occupies our mental space and it really overwhelms us and paralyzes our thoughts and our mind, it's going to make us less emotionally available for our kids. So we're going to tend يمكن انه خلاص تحطه قدام التي في خليني بس حل هالقصة او which is okay بتصير يعني بس when it becomes repetitive and intense, then yes, it might be a problem. Usually, I don't want to generalize, but people who have this fear of abandonment within certain, severe trauma, they tend, if they are not aware of it, to reproduce this in their children. So to be either very critical of their children, blaming, or oscillate between periods where they are very intensely هيك معلقين بأولادهم وبيبوسوا وبيعملوا هيك و periods where خلص they tend to dismiss it to dismiss them a lot. So usually they can have this oscillation between, again, being very, very close and being so. The child needs as much as possible, because we're not perfect and we're all like that. أكتر شيء the child to develop a secure attachment, he needs a caregiver that's constant with him, that does not goes to extreme between I love you so much, you're the best kid, or I hate you so much, you're a mean kid, But it's something that we can work on. لأنه ultimately there are no bad parents. أكيد إلا إذا في parents abusers, they hate, they abuse. This is different, but like ordinary violence, this can be really, really dealt with through parental guidance, psychoeducation, therapy.
All right, very clear. My partner cheated on me and I have fear of abandonment, so I decided to cheat first in my relationships.
With a different partner?
Okay, and in my
Okay.
other. So is this common?
Well, yes, لأنه it depends on the situation, but usually infidelity, it can, as we said, it can trigger fear of abandonment, and it can be, sometimes for some people it's traumatic. For some people مش التروما اللي حكينا عنه هديك المرة that threatens the integrity of your life, but it's a kind of a traumatic experience to be cheated at. So sometimes مثل حتى نحمي حالنا من هالشيء بنصير نحن we are acting out إنه عم نعمل هيدا الشيء out of fear, out of acting out. But ultimately it's not gonna help having a committed, long-lasting relationship. Maybe it's just a phase that we need to go through it, but if really we feel that we're stuck in there, then it's better to really to talk with someone about it.
All right. ما بقى عندنا أسئلة إذا بعد عندك هيك points you want to
Well, I think I wanted, إذا هيك بدي أعمل summary شوي, I want to highlight on the importance of prior traumatic experiences of abuse, neglect, emotional unavailability of our main attachment figures, لأنه this is the main reason for the fear of abandonment. And being aware about them, having the self-awareness and the reactivation of older trauma is the first step, because it helps identify إنه أنا وقت هالقد عم خاف, it's something related to my older trauma and I need to address it. We need to differentiate and to see if we are in a healthy relationship, will fear of abandonment تبعنا is going to destroy this relationship, while I am in a non-healthy, toxic relationship with an abusive partner, and my fear of abandonment is triggered by this partner, because it happens also. So this is also important, and this is where friends can help. This is where a therapist can help also, because if we are in a loving relationship with a partner who loves us, who wants to be with us, who wants to stay with us, who's doing all her or his best, and still we're feeling insecure, then we need to address this, because it will ultimately, it can destroy the relationship. Self-compassion is very important, and I would say what we talked about, the four main pillars is that self-awareness, identifying that it is a traumatic reaction and the reactivation of older traumas, and when it is triggered, self-compassion, because we need to accept it and not to self-blame ourselves in order to address it. Building, talking with your partner about it, because it's important that he understands that you have this fear of abandonment and what are the situations that trigger it, because sometimes there are little things that he can do that doesn't cost much, that will make you feel better, which is okay. If you're asking a kid something completely unreasonable, it's a different story. This is best, and being able to set the boundaries, for the partner to set the boundaries, building a community of support, social networks and support, having nurturing friendships. This is also very important. Paradoxically, the solution is not within the partner, it's also within all the social network that you have.
Right.
And therapy, of course, either individual or couple therapy.
يعني هيك كمان يعني thank you so much لهيك the overview is very important, very nice. It's هيك it clarifies لنا how to navigate this. يعني سؤالين بس مهمين بالنسبة لإلك، شو هن يعني وين حدا لازم يحس اليوم إذا عم بيسمعونا الناس، وين حدا لازم يحس إنه لا it's a red line أو خلص I should take action and look at this. وين بتنصحي إنه كيف يعرفوا إنه خلص this is something I have to handle، ولا خلص it's just something I heard وبكرة it continues as normal.
Well, I think it's two red flags. The first red flags is قد ايه هالشي عم how much is it occupying your mind and mental space. إذا كل الوقت أنا عم فكر بهيدا الشيء من الصبح للعشية، it's a constant worry, it's a constant preoccupation. إذا كل شغلة عم بيعملها البارتنر تبعي عم حللها وعم بعملها وعم ببرمها، إذا I am unable to do the things that I usually do and enjoy my life because I am constantly thinking and worried about this, then this is a huge red flag. أكيد. This is different from having transient thoughts that I can deal with. So this is first. And second, هو the inability to deal with this fear. So if you have this fear and you act it out through your behaviors and you're not being able to deal and regulate yourself with this, regulate yourself or help other people regulate you, then and your partner is not being able to reassure you, then مثل ما قلنا, it's not the fear in itself, it is how you act out this fear and if you're able to regulate this fear. So these are the two red flags, I would say. How much it occupies your mental space and prevents you from living your life the way you want it, you want to live it. And two, it's how, if you act it out. Are you acting it out through fights, through stalking, through constant messages, through self-harm, through suicidal ideas, threatening of suicide, conflictual atmosphere all the time? This is like clearly a sign that no, we shouldn't continue as if there was nothing. يعني.
كمان عنا comments دكتور هلا إنه اليوم if our partner has this problem حكيت أنت إنه اليوم we have to no, it's our role to reassure somehow but not to overdo it. Is there anything else? مرات the partner is not ready to see that to have the self-awareness. Is it our role as a partner to enlighten or to save entre guillemets ولا ننطر لحدا نوصل هو يكون ready يطلع هالissues? Can we force someone to look at these issues ولا لا؟
يعني I would not say force, but I would say in a relationship are a very important healing factor in traumas. يعني it's important that we can address this issue even if we feel that our partner is in denial, and we can try. And ultimately, if we feel that sometimes people who have fear of abandonment can look like they are people who are controlling, people who are, very possessive and jealous, and it can be very hard to live with a person like that. But sometimes it takes a little thing to reassure them. يعني to see أنا قد إيه بقدر، قد إيه قادرة أنا أعمل هالreassurance وقد إيه مش قادرة. يمكن نشوف إنه أنا ماني قادرة، يعني إنه ultimately it's also يعني we don't have to. It's not our duty to save us, but it's our duty to reassure them as if it's something important for them, and if it doesn't يعني if it's not unreasonable مثل هيدا الاكزامبل اللي عطيتك عنه انه مش حنحط لهم الكاميرا اون اذا سافرنا، لا this is هون بنفوت بالسيفير مود، وهون بنفوت انه اوكي بعمل يلي بده اياه بس كرمال لا يرتاح، لا هيدا it's not healthy. بس reassuring them and trying to identify the situation، يعني we can talk to them and tell them انه انا I observed، انا لاحظت انه في مرات بحسك بتتوتري، بحسك بتعصبي علي، ما بفهم ليه، انه could it be related to some interpretations that you have of some situations, what are the situations that make you feel like this. So don't try to not take it personally, you know, he's attacking me or she is blaming me. Try to identify the situation that are triggering this. So أكيد we cannot force a person, but we can try. I think we can try. لأنه again interpersonal relationships is really one of the most important factors in healing from this.
حكيتي كمان we have a question about pleaser personality.
Yeah.
If you can elaborate more إنه
إنه نرجع على فكرة السلف وورث، يعني نرجع على فكرة السلف وورث، نرجع على فكرة السكيور attachment. إنه people who don't have a secure attachment usually they don't think highly of themselves. They don't think that they deserve to be loved. They don't think they may look as very confident people, but deep down they feel that they are unworthy of love, and they feel they have to gain the love all the time. They have to merit this love. They have to deserve this love. So when they try to please, yani, they have this tendency to want to please their partners because they don't want their partners to leave them, and they think if they are perfect partners, they are preventing the separation. So I have to be a perfect partner. I have to always please my partners. I put his needs above my own, but this also builds resentment. يعني as soon as the partner pulls away شوي, a lot of resentment. وأنا كل شيء بعمله، وأنا كل شيء بعمل لك إياه، وأنا هيك وأنا هيك وأنا هيك. So ultimately it's not a good thing. But this is usually associated with the fear of abandonment and wanting to be the perfect partner in order to say, no, he could never leave me because I'm the perfect partner. Whereas it doesn't exist يعني something such as the perfect partner.
all right. Thank you so much. يعني
Thank
it's
you.
very, very enlightening. We don't have any more questions. Parting words هلا اليوم يعني أعطيتنا كمان هيك an overview of the journey which is يعني very clear, very interesting. عندك شي parting words للparents يلي عم بيحضروا؟ يعني حكيتي كتير عن nurturing the secure attachment مع البيبي، بس هيك any parting words كمان لأنه a lot of parents are worried
Of course.
are they doing something wrong. مرات they have a sick child، الchild الثاني ما بياخد أهمية قد ال sick child. ظروف الحياة بتصير مرات the parent is not there. يعني هلأ كتير عم نشوف families that are torn بين إنه حدا منه هون مسافر physically منه موجود one of the parents. So not always عندهم هالluxury يعملوا هالbond وهالsecure attachment. So لأنك حكيتي you touch on
أكيد
want to end هيك بشيء
of course.
للأهل يلي بالنسبة لهم اليوم they are worried إنه they would nurture this in their kids. What would you say?
Of course, listen, it's very important. This is very good idea to end for this parenting, because this is where prevention happens, and this is where it all starts, يعني the earlier. I would say something that is very important to developing a secure attachment is the ability of reparation. يعني I would use this word reparation. ليش؟ لأنه إذا نحن there is no parent، ما في ولا parent بالدنيا ما بيعيط أوقات على أولاده، ما بيقول لهم أوقات حكي شوي ثقيل، ما بيكون بيت هيك dismissive or expeditive لأنه عندي 1100 شغلة، ولأنه هلأ خلص إنه حل عني لأنه مش لاقي ألعب. So this is completely normal. وين بيخلق الانسكيور اتاتشمنت؟ اذا انا بعمل هالشيء كل الوقت وبحس الولد انه ما عنده اهميه كرمالي، بس if I have اهميه لإلي، بس اذا انا عندي the ability to repair. يعني انا مثلا افترضي I had a violent reaction towards a kid، ما عم بحكي انه ضربته وهيك وصرنا انه abuse، بس I had an ordinary، هلا عم نحكي ordinary violence، ordinary violent reaction، صرخت عليه قلت له هيدا، و I felt انه it was not يعني it was not justified، إنه أنا كنت معصبة وفشت خلقي فيه. So في أرجع أحكي، في أقول له إنه بتعرف إنه أنا انه انا عصبت وعيطت عليك مش لانه انت مش منيح، لانه انا كنت معصبه و I'm really sorry I did that. That's it. Without overdoing it كمان. يعني الولد ما بده يحس انه هلا البارنت is guilt tripping وبدي استفيد من السيتويشن، لانه kids tend to manipulate us also. To be very 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 concise. انه انا يعني نفسر للولد. اوقات الولد بيعمل interpretations غريبه، يعني اوقات مثلا بفكر انه بيو مسافر عم يشتغل برا لانه لانه ما بحبه enough. هي بتكون انه مقصه بالموضوع، ونحن بنفكر انه it's obvious انه اكيد انه لا. بس اوقات الولد بده explication explanations لهيدا الشيء. building secure attachment مع الولد هو انه نحن نفسر له شو عم بيصير بحياتنا، ما نخبي عليه، ما نكذب عليه. beginning from 3 years old بيفهم اشياء مثل بده يفل، بده يرجع، بده هذا، سو نفسر له ونحكي. وحتى قبل help validate his emotions. so إذا عنده emotions ما نقول له ما تبكي، وقف تبكي، وحش تبكي. أوكي أنت هلأ معصب، ما في خليك تحضر تي في أكتر. I'm so sorry بس I understand إنه أنت معصب هالقد I'm with you. لا تقطع الكريز. مش إنه برجع بحط له التي في كرمال لحتى لي ما يعصب، لأنه ما بكون عم علمه to deal with his emotions. بس مش إنه شفت بتستاهل وما إذا ما بحياتك رح تحضر تي في بقى. لا، أنا ما فيني حضرك بقى تي في هلا، بس أنا بفهم إنه هيدا الشيء it frustrates لأنه أنت بدك تحضر تي في بعد. بس أنا هون it's gonna pass. يعني this is how we help them deal with the frustration, deal with the and أكيد أهم شيء ما نعمل شيء يعني ما فينا مثلا لأنه ما بدنا إياهم يزعلوا ما نقول لهم إنه نحن مسافرين يومين وفجأة يوعوا إنه إنه منا هون، إنه إيه فلت الماما لأنه مدري شو عندها. يعني not to lie to them. some parents think إنه إذا أنا مثلا ما بقول له أو هيك لا just to tell them. ودايما نقول له انه اذا انا مثلا هلا فليت رح ارجع. يعني انا فالة برجع هالنهار، فالة 5 ايام عندي كونفرنس بس برجع هالنهار ورح احكيك بهالساعة. يعني predictability is very important to build a secure sense of self and attachment. reparation, predictability، قد ما فينا constance، قد ما فينا validation، يعني validation of the emotion. we just try to bond when we can. ما ضروري نقعد معه كل النهار، بس أوقات 10 دقايق بالنهار special time can be enough for a child.
Thank you so much. يعني
Thank you.
حكيناها عن جد pillars of education و pillars of prevention مثل ما قلتي. So it was an amazing session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Thanks to all. Thanks to all.
Hope we'll see you in كمان أكيد in other sessions.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much
of
again.
course. Thanks to you. Have a nice evening. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.